Do you worry about what information about you is floating around out there? No? You should be. That's not to say that everyone has to be a paranoid Perry, but you should have a reasonable concern about what information is out there, where it is, and how it's protected. Or is it protected? If you're curious about what this means to you and you want to learn more about how to protect yourself in this digital age, stay with me and I'll describe some simple yet effective ways to keep yourself safe. One of the first things you want to do is take stock. Conduct an inventory of your digital identity or identities. How many email accounts do you have? How many user IDs and passwords do you have? This can seem like a daunting task, and it very well may be, but just like anything else, all you have to do is prioritize. What are the most critical or risky identities? Having trouble determining what that is? Don't beat yourself up. I do this for a living, and although it's a simple question, the answer isn't always readily apparent. So, let's start with an easy one. Your finances. How many bank accounts do you have? Are they with more than one financial institution? Take an inventory of these and list out what usernames or identities you have. Next, maybe focus on social media. I find it a common misconception that people don't perceive social media as critical or significant. And it isn't from a I must have this to live perspective, but social media is one of the first places bad guys go to learn more about an individual, what they do, where they spend their time, their hobbies, etc. Think of it as like a bank robber, casing the joint. If bad guys are any good at their job, and believe you me, this is their profession and they take it very seriously, they'll conduct reconnaissance well before taking action. So protecting your social media identity is critical from that perspective. And there are numerous other examples of digital identities, from public utilities to online shopping. Take an inventory and prioritize according to how risky you deem them. If you don't get them all, don't fret. This is likely the first time you've ever done anything like this. And so newsflash, you won't be an expert. This is a big first step. So just by acknowledging and taking action, you'll be light years ahead of most people. If you're doing this exercise while you're watching this video, then go ahead and pause and resume here once you've completed your list. Okay, you have it? It's long, right? No sweat. This is by far the most important step you'll ever take. You can't take steps to secure your identity information if you don't know where it is. Make sense? Now ask yourself, what password do I use for these accounts? Go ahead, write it down. Say it out loud. Better yet, why don't you whisper it to me? Wrong! Don't ever write down your passwords or store them in a Word document or some kind of text file. If you've got an office job and spend most of your time on the computer, it's likely your employer may have training or guidance in this area. And depending on what industry you're in, it could be very strict or lackadaisical. I know this is common practice for a lot of people, and it seems like a useful tool to remember your password. But it's also a weakness, because where's that file with all your passwords? Is it on your desk? Stored on your computer? Is it stored in the cloud? You see where I'm going with this? Now that doesn't mean someone's going to rappel down from the ceiling Mission Impossible style and steal your passwords. It just means you should be more careful about where you keep information. But don't worry, I'll show you an easy way to consolidate some of your passwords and keep them safe. Okay, so you've thought about all the passwords that you use for your more critical identities. Are they all the same? If not, they're probably similar, right? Again, this is human nature and common practice, and the bad guys are counting on it. I'll get more into password complexities and consolidation in a bit, but one of the best and easiest things you can do is to use a more complex password and change it regularly. I don't necessarily mean you have to change it every 30 days, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say most of you probably haven't changed some or any of those passwords in over a year, or maybe ever. Another simple yet effective method to protecting your more critical identities, or assets in this case, is establishing a complex password to be specifically used for those high-value assets, like your bank account. So what constitutes a complex password? There are a lot of security frameworks out there that businesses use to help protect their assets. The good example is CIS, or Center for Internet Security. It's tailored to provide security benchmarks for specific types of technologies, but their guidance for passwords can be broadly applied, and it's simple to follow. I'll paste a link in the description so you can review it at your leisure. But one of the criteria for complexity is password length. Your password should be at least 14 characters, if not longer. And this is for a very simple and, again, effective reason. The longer the password is, the more difficult it is to guess or crack. There are a lot of good videos and explanations out there, but in the simplest terms, particularly for password cracking, it becomes exponentially and mathematically more difficult to crack a password the longer it is. And really, all that means is just the time it takes for a password cracking algorithm to compute the answer. So a password that is 8 characters and not very complex can take anywhere from a few minutes to a few days, versus a 14-character complex password can take anywhere from a few months to well over the lifespan of a human. So the message here is, don't make it easy for the bad guys. Okay, so you've taken stock. You've got your passwords. Maybe you even established a complex password and a change routine for your more critical assets. Now what? Another step you can take is to consolidate your identities by using a single authentication source. Well, what does that mean? It's easy. You ever go to a new website and you're interested in a service they provide, so they ask you to create an account? And sometimes, not always, but certainly more common these days, is that instead of creating an account, they might provide you the option to sign in using Google or Facebook. Example, as a YouTuber, there are plenty of services out there for content creators that we use to edit videos or make thumbnails. I sometimes use Canva to create thumbnails for my videos, and you need to create an account. Well, I already have a Google account for my YouTube channel. So instead of creating a new account just for Canva, I logged in using my Google account. This way I don't have another username and password to maintain. This methodology has pros and cons. One of the pros being the aforementioned account maintenance. The con being that if I now have several services linked back to my Google account, that identity I have with Google now becomes more critical. So in that inventory you created earlier, if your Google or Gmail account was at the bottom in terms of criticality, it now may warrant being upgraded, which means establishing a more complex password. And maybe some other practices like scheduled changes, multi-factor authentication. I'll talk more about these in another video, but the point is to know your digital identity and protect them based on how critical or valuable they are. Now, I don't expect all of you to go out into the world with a newfound mission to protect all your digital identities with DoD level security. That would be unrealistic. Instead, just walking away with some insight about what this means to you. What risk do you have and how do you manage it? Everybody has risk and everyone manages it, or not, differently. I hope you enjoyed this video and hopefully you learned something too. If you have questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you, and if you're interested in more, don't forget to push all those buttons for more fun and educational videos. Thanks everyone. I'll see you next time.